A lot of positive news to discuss here on Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. A key player may be returning off of IR for this week's game against the Washington Commanders. One player is definitely returning. Chop Robinson. We'll get more into that later on in the show. We will also take a look at the Dolphins and Commanders injury reports before this Real Madrid game on Sunday morning. But the key return that may actually happen is offensive tackle Austin Jackson. He officially returned to practice on Wednesday for Miami. He has been sidelined and on injured reserve since week 1 against the Colts with a toe injury. He returning to practice means that 21-day practice window is open. What does that mean? If you don't know, now that he has practice, he has 21 days to be activated back to the 53-man roster. If he is not activated in that 21-day window, he is going to be out for the rest of the year, but I do not anticipate that ultimately happening. More coming up on Austin Jackson here, but sub-battle against the Washington Commanders report here at Chat Sports. We trail by 9 in our Week 11 sub-battle. Listen, we should take care of business on Sunday in the game. Let's take care of business here on YouTube as well. Join the channel. Let's take down the Commanders. Obviously, it's been an interesting year up front for Miami. You have the second-year left tackle, Patrick Paul flashing. Aaron Brewer has been phenomenal. Jonas Savaiinaea has been horrific. But your starting right line duo, James Daniels and Austin Jackson, haven't played at all this year. They haven't even gotten through one quarter playing together. Daniels went down on the first drive of the season, and Jackson went out early in that first game against the Colts. But maybe with Jackson returning, you will see him slot back in at right tackle and Larry Borom head back to the bench as that swing tackle. But I got to be honest, I got to give credit to Larry Borom. Although it started off really poorly for him in the first month of the year, he was absolutely terrible. Really, ever since the month of October started, he's been a serviceable right tackle, and you can't honestly expect much more from a swing tackle and a backup guy. Listen, he's a backup and not a starter for a reason. So these are the type of things that you expect to see in terms of his tape, in terms of his PFF grades. Like, you are fine with what Larry Borom has done because ideally you never have to see him play. But with him having to play, I think he's been serviceable over the last month and a half. But it would be very nice to get Austin Jackson back. I said on Monday that if an offensive lineman returned from IR, I would hope it would be James Daniels because he needs to replace Cole Strange, as Strange is the worst of the two between him and Larry Borom. But also you invested so much money into James Daniels this offseason, giving him a 3-year, $24 million contract. It'd be nice to see what the right guard actually can bring to this table that the Dolphins are trying to set for years beyond. But listen, you got to have Austin Jackson back as well because not only is he an improvement over Larry Borom, but I personally also want to evaluate him in terms of his future with the Miami Dolphins as well. It is no secret that Jackson, who has been unable to stay on the football field over the past couple of years, is certainly a candidate to be cut or traded this offseason. He's going into the final year of his deal. Now, it's a little bit tricky if you did want to move off of Austin Jackson. Why? Because he has a $9.8 million base salary, a $15.7 million cap hit, and he is owed $11.5 million in cash. So it's not like there's a ton of savings if you ultimately cut him prior to June 1st or even after June 1st. He also has a $1 million roster bonus, third year of the league year, gets kicked in. That would be March 13th of 2026. So if you are going to move off of Austin Jackson, a decision would likely have to be made prior to March 13th because if you hold on to him past that date, you owe him another $1 million fully guaranteed. Like, I don't think that's something Miami should look to do in terms of keeping him and giving him that money and then cut him afterwards or trade him afterwards. But I'm looking to replace Austin Jackson this offseason anyway, I should say, whether it is in free agency or whether it is in the NFL draft. Jackson, the former first-round pick, yeah, he got a 3-year extension by Miami, but he's been unable to stay on the field. He missed half the season in 2024. He's missed more than half of the season in 2025. And it's not like his play on the field is so elite where you are willing to take the risk of having him on your team with how much time he misses. I'd say he's an average offensive lineman. So with him being an average guy on the field and a below average player off the field in terms of his ability to stay on the field, there's just no reason to keep him around and pay him this type of money. So I'm looking to replace him. But are you? Are you moving off of Austin Jackson this offseason with only 1 year left on his deal? Pin comment on today's show. If you hate with YouTube ad break, scroll down, let it play, and answer today's question. Well, if you did replace him, here are some interesting options to keep your eye on. You could either go in the NFL draft and take a top offensive lineman with your first round pick, which is likely going to be in the top 12 or top 15. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out. Top offensive tackle prospects in my book are Spencer Fano from Utah, Caden Proctor from Alabama, and Francis Maigoa from Miami. Fanu's a right tackle naturally, so that would be a pretty good fit there to replace Austin Jackson. Proctor and Maigoa, I think, could play either position in the entire NFL. And if you look at free agency, there's a couple of right tackles that certainly intrigue me. Braden Smith from the Colts and Jermaine Illuminor from the Giants. Jermaine's been really good for New York. He's 30 years old. He's likely going to get a contract similar to what Austin Jackson will be paid anyway this offseason. And Braden Smith, the Colts offensive tackle, he's one of the best free agents out there. I doubt he hits the open market, but he's slated to right now. He could command close to $20 million, which I don't think Miami will ultimately invest $20 million into an offensive tackle, but you never know. And Rasheed Walker from the Packers is an interesting name to keep an eye on. He's played predominantly left tackle, but I think he can make the slide over to right tackle. Don't know what he would be getting in free agency. Might be around that Austin Jackson range, but I'm looking for players that can stay on the field and give you similar, if not better, production than Austin Jackson. I think all 6 of these guys would simply be able to do that. Move over from offensive line talk to defensive line talk. We talked about it earlier off the top of the show. Chop Robinson. He is finally clearing concussion protocol. Obviously suffered that concussion in Week 9 against the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. Missed the game against the Buffalo Bills. But he should be back for Sunday's game against the Washington Commanders. And I am so excited for not only Miami, but for Chop Robinson, because he's had a pretty down 2025 season, because the last 2 months of his rookie year were absolutely sensational. And we'll take a look at how dominant he was here in just a second. But many of us, including myself, expected him to really take that second-year leap and become one of the top 15, 20 edge rushers in the NFL and be a premier number 1 type of guy. It simply just hasn't happened, whether it is he isn't that good or it's because of the lack of playing time, only playing in 37% of the snaps this year compared to Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, both getting 65, 67% of the snaps. Maybe that could be it, or maybe Chop Robinson just needs to improve on a lot of different things. Both could be true, but I expect Chop to get close to 67, 70% of the snaps for the rest of the year. And if he's able to showcase what he did as a rookie, which we'll talk about here more in a second, I think we're in for another good 2-month stretch here for Chop Robinson. As we continue here on today's show, we are brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day. Well, it's good to be right on PrizePicks, and with the weather changing, well, the feeling of being right never gets old. Keep the season rolling on PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. So simple to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in. You want flexibility? Play with the flex play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter your play, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test. I've got an entry in for Thursday Night Football. More than Breece Hall touchdowns, more than Drake May completions, and more than Travion Henderson yards on first carry. No Ramondre Stevenson, so Travion should eat once again. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Links in the description and comments of today's video. Listen, if there's anything we want to see in the last 2 months of the year, I mean, there's a short list of things you want to see with the season potentially being out of reach. That would be improvements on the defensive line from Kenneth Grant, from Chop Robinson, and Jordan Phillips. You see improvements from Jonas Avianaya, and you see some flashes from these young corners like Jack Jones and Juju Brents. And Chop Robinson, if we could start to see some flashes and consistency of a 2024 version where he was a top 5 pass rusher for the final 2 months of the year, that would make me feel pretty confident about him getting a bigger workload in 2026 and being able to deliver on that workload. Because I mentioned how good he was. If you look from week 8 to week 17 a year ago, he was dominant. He had the 7th highest pass rush grade, He generated the fourth most pressures and fourth most QB hurries. He had a 20% pass rush win rate, which was third in the NFL, just trailing guys like Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett. And the signature PRP stat from PFF that looks at everything in the pass rush, he was graded as the third best pass rusher in sole pass rush opportunities. Guy was dominant down the stretch of last season. So it's been a little concerning and confusing on why he wasn't able to have a big start to the year this season. Like I said, it could be because only playing in 35, 36% of the snaps. But with Jalen Phillips gone, well, he's likely going to play 65, 70% of the snaps defensively now. So hopefully we see Chop Robinson eat at some of these quarterbacks, and he has a good opportunity against the Commanders team that doesn't have the best offensive line. All right, time to look at some injury reports here for both squads. Miami's got 8 players listed as a DNP or limited. The headliners are obviously 2 key starters. Aaron Brewer, the center, is a DNP with a foot injury. Rasul Douglas, who missed the game against the Bills, also a DNP with a foot injury. But you see Davis, Eskridge, Gordon, Hill, Jackson, and Melifonwu all limited. And all the players that are limited have a really high chance to play. McDaniel said earlier this week on Monday that he expects Davis, Eskridge, Douglas, and Hill to return for Miami. Gordon was active on Sunday. So was Melifonwu. So the only player that was limited that is up in the air in terms of if they play on Sunday or not is Austin Jackson, potentially returning from IR. But when you look at both Rasul Douglas and Aaron Brewer listed as DNPs, I expect both the plays, especially Aaron Brewer. Brewer simply hasn't practiced a ton this year because of him being banged up from time to time. This is a player that is very vital to the Dolphins' offensive success. 6th highest graded center on Pro Football Focus this year. He's been active for every game. He's key in terms of this run system Miami has, getting to that second level, getting out to the perimeter on these sweeps and end arounds after snapping the ball. Aaron Brewer is one of the most underrated offensive linemen in all of football, and I'm glad he's on our team. He's got 1 year left on his deal, thank goodness, and I expect him to be out there Sunday morning. I think this might have just been a precautious DNP for him, and with McDaniel saying Douglas is expected to return this Sunday, just past Monday, I don't really look too much in that DNP either. Thursday's injury report will tell us the whole story. Let's look at the Commanders' injury report, starting with their DNPs. And they've already had 4 players ruled out for this game. Obviously, quarterback Jayden Daniels is going to catch the eyes of everyone at home. We know he's going to be out with that gruesome left elbow injury he suffered. But the one that's interesting is Terry McLaurin. Now, he's not listed as out on the injury report, but it was reported by multiple NFL insiders that Terry McLaurin is not going to play in this game, and those reports came in on Monday and Tuesday, so he's already out. And then the other 2 DNPs for the Commanders, veteran tight end Zach Ertz and offensive tackle Laramie Tunsil, both with the rest day, though, so both will be active for the Commanders on Sunday. And then the 3 limited players on the Commanders injury report, all pretty significant defensive pieces. Quan Martin, Frankie Louvu, and Will Harris, all limited and all expected to play. But how about this interesting note with the Washington Commanders? Dan Quinn announced that he is taking over defensive play calling this week for the Washington Commanders due to the Commanders' struggles on the defensive side of the football field. And defensive struggles might be a nice way to put it because they have maybe the worst defense in the entire NFL. Certainly up for debate with the Commanders and the Cowboys, but they're right there, man. They allow 394 yards per game, 30th in the NFL, 28 points per game, 29th in the NFL. They allow the most yards per play at 6.4. They have the worst EPA per pass and the second worst EPA per play. Now, they are slightly better against the run, but it's still 24th in the NFL. Point is, the Commanders' defense is quite literally putrid. You are throwing up watching some of this tape and film. And we talked a lot about how the Miami Dolphins defense was so bad in the first 2 months of the year. How about the turnaround they've made? Over the last month, they have been a top half defense in the NFL. They've actually, fun fact, been the best defense in the NFL in EPA per rush over the last 4 weeks. That includes games against the Buffalo Bills and James Cook, who's a second highest rusher this year, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, and Bijan Robinson. So you've played 3 of the top 6, 7 backs in football this year over the last month, and you've been the number 1 run defense in EPA per run over the last month. what a turnaround this Dolphins defense has had. And if we're going to be honest, Miami should absolutely win this game. You look at all three phases this year, the Dolphins are better in all three phases. They have a better defense than the Commanders, which they can't say that about a lot of opponents, but you can this week. They have a better offense with Jayden Daniels out. Marcus Mariota-led Commanders' offense isn't as good as the Dolphins' offense. And your special teams unit has been better this year as well. This is a game Miami is favored in a neutral site in Real Madrid, and it's a game that they should absolutely win. I don't think it's going to be some win that propels Miami to the playoffs, but this could easily be a third win in their last 4 games. Remember, Falcons, they lost to the Ravens, beat the Bills, could beat the Commanders, and then you go on a bye week the week following, when then you have the 2 arguable worst teams in football the weeks after, in the Saints and Jets. It's hard not to project this team winning 4 straight if you include the Bills game and getting the 6-7 heading into the final month of the year. It's kind of crazy to project that, but this is where we're at this season, folks. And we'll be here every week, every day with live shows and videos. So make sure you subscribe and join the Dolphins Today family.